What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Ice the Kicker. My name is Glen and Matt alongside Matt Ferrara. It is Thanksgiving week in the NFL. Really, the point in the NFL season where we're like, all right, the playoff swing or the playoff push is well underway. So we've got about 6 weeks left. All of the teams, really most of them, still in the hunt, including our two favorite teams, the Giants and Dolphins. We'll get to that in a second. But before we get into that and the rest of the games around the league, unfortunate news was really the big story this week. Number one overall pick out of this year's draft, Joe Burrow out of LSU on the Bengals, obviously, tore basically everything in his knee, ACL, MCL, other structural damage, you name it. It was just a real ugly play against Washington. And this isn't one of those, ACLs where it's just the ACL, you rehab it 9-12 months, you're back and like nothing happened. This is a lot worse than that. It's the ACL, it's the MCL. Really reminiscent of that Teddy Bridgewater injury that he had for the Vikings. And Teddy Bridgewater, he missed a few seasons with that injury. So really a tough break for that Cincinnati Bengals franchise that were hoping to build off of what they saw from Burrow this year and catapult them into contention in the AFC North in 2021. But that plan's going to have to put on hold until we see Joe Burrow again, maybe not even until 2022. Him healthy finally. So it's a bad break for the Bengals. It's a bad break for Bengals fans, and really it's a bad break for the entire NFL because he was really one of the bright young quarterbacks in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow, it was one of those guys where his story transferring out of Ohio State, going to LSU, carrying it up, having probably the best season that a team in LSU could have and the best season that an individual could have at the quarterback position, winning the Heisman, winning the national championship, being the first overall pick, and then he was balling out for a little bit, and then obviously just a freak football accident comes in play. His own lineman basically gets tossed into him, his front legs planted, and if you see the slow-mo of the video, his knee obviously buckles, but it goes out of place and then almost pops into place. And it was just oh my God. And it's just, again, I keep talking about it. We keep talking about that. Football is just, you're so lucky if you come out of games alive. You really are. When you think about all the close, well, if I took one extra step here, if my foot was planted here, there's so many times where you could potentially get rolled up on and potentially honestly have career-ending injuries. And I know, and like you were saying, this isn't just your basic ACL tear. This is your ACL, your MCL. There was other structural damage in there too. And like you said, it's going to be probably a little bit more than that 9 to 12 month recovery. And honestly, if I'm kind of a Bengals fan or a coach or a GM, are you a little bit concerned about who he's going to be when he comes back? Because I think I am too. Because it's hard for anybody. When you look at Jimmy G when he came back from his knee injury, Tannehill too was he's still kind of fighting back from it. So it's one of those things where you're never really the same again. And for a guy who loves to escape the pocket and his ability to extend plays, that's his bread and butter right there. If you kind of take that away from him, then maybe you don't really know what you're going to get. And I'm not trying to pull the plug on Joe Burrow by any means, but it just goes to show you that one bad injury like this could change their franchise for 10 years.
Yeah, and he's the guy that they picked with that same thought in mind over the next 10 years. This is going to be our guy. We got out of the Dalton era that really kind of disappointed, and now we got Joe Burrow. We had the first overall pick. It's escaping me what their record was last year. Obviously, it was horrible since they got first overall. Did they have a win last year? One, two?
They might have 2.
Yeah, so they got the guy. It was a big quarterback draft class. Obviously, it was him, and then it was Tua and Herbert and all the other guys in the first round. And he was looking, a lot is said about Tua and a lot has been said about Herbert, but Joe Burrow under the radar, really, which is weird for a first overall guy to go under the radar. But he was having a pretty good rookie season. He was making mistakes like every other rookie would, but he was showing you things that would dictate that the Cincinnati Bengals made the right decision in drafting him first overall over a Tua or over a Herbert, whoever else could have been in that pick. So what you said is absolutely true. Now you have to be worried about what Herbert is going to be when he comes back. And the unfortunate timing of this injury being November means if it's the 12-month period, then that's 3 quarters into next season. And at that point, what's the point of bringing him back at all? I don't anticipate the Bengals being in contention this time next year without him starting the season. unless they go out and they get like a Fitzpatrick or a placeholder guy and they
Yeah.
play really, really well. But in the abundance of caution, even if, they're on the outside looking in next year, by the time Burrow would be ready in week 12 or 13 of next year, it might not even be worth it. So this is a guy you might not see until training camp training camp, which will be in June, July of 2022. So
Hmm.
you're putting in a lot of patience in a guy that you only saw for 6, 7, 8 games. And it's just a horrible break for that franchise who finally thought they had their guy. Now this
Hmm.
whole window it's not open because they weren't making the playoffs this year. But the entire I guess process and development of the quarterback in the organization is completely put on pause for another 19 to 20 months
Yeah.
because this guy is going to be out for the rest of this year and possibly all of next year.
Hmm.
So the contention window is backed up a few years now, and that's not what you want to hear if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan.
Yeah, it's the whole thing you're talking about is just the cycle of a rebuild, basically. And like you said, let's even assume he comes back, say in even 9 months. So he comes back and it's like what week 6, week
Yeah.
7, whatever it is. That's pretty optimistic, I would say, with the amount of structural damage he has in his knee. I would say you put anyone at quarterback there with basically kind of how their team is, you're not winning really many games. So we
Mm.
can basically almost write off the Bengals as of right now for next year. And like you
Yeah,
said,
absolutely.
where are they going without Joe Burrow as their quarterback? All right, maybe you get a Fitz and he might give you some hope. But then also you have to think about now, all right, what free agent is going to go to Cincinnati? Because
Yeah.
it's like, all right, well, it's if Joe Burrow's there fully healthy for next year,
Mhm.
I'm there. Play with a new young stud quarterback. He's showing to have a potential rookie of the year kind of season. All right, but now you're saying, all right, well, Joe Burrow may be back by week 7, week 8. He may not even be back at all. So you're almost kind of punting a whole nother year. So when it comes to a free agent, who's going to really want to go there and waste a whole year of a contract? And then even for Cincinnati, why am I going to want to spend big bucks? Because they do need a lot of reinforcements on that team. Like their offensive line is terrible. Their
Mm.
defense is really nothing special. You have an aging AJ Green who's probably on his way out. But who are they going to sign to kind of help them? So it's going to
Yeah.
be, I foresee just another year where they kind of are still rebuilding, and you're not going to have a quarterback. You're going to have to get a Fitzpatrick type guy unless they want to roll with Finley for whatever reason. I don't really see the point in that. But you're not going to see them, I wouldn't say, start contending from a GM standpoint. I would say until the 2021 offseason.
Yeah, so what do you think the best move is going forward for Cincinnati? Is it getting a placeholder quarterback like a Jameis Winston or a Ryan Fitzpatrick to kind of plug in and make like some sort of makeshift contender next season?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think the best thing to do is kind of say, Burrow, you're not playing until 2022, but when you come back, we're going to use from today until week 1 of 2022 to build you the best offensive line we possibly can. That means not spending money on a running back or on a receiver or weapons.
Mm-hmm.
When you come back, you're going to have a completely solid brick wall and nobody's going to touch you, and then we'll worry about skill positions at that point. Like, what do you think it's better for them to go on a normal offseason track that they had planned under the circumstance or the hypothetical that Burrow would have been healthy? Or do you think they should reshift everything, just plug in all of their resources, whether it be draft picks or free agent money, towards the offensive line and wait for him to come back before they start
So,
contending?
so I wouldn't get a guy like Fitzpatrick because you know what you're going to get with him. I I would honestly enjoy seeing someone like a Jameis, even if they wanted to take a flyer on Rosen again, or someone like that caliber, or even like a Mariota, say where, hey, they may not be amazing, but there's still some milk that you want to squeeze out of those guys. It's just like a Jameis, like he's still got something to prove a little bit, and he by no means is a guy that I would kind of want to write off. Maybe even a Cam Newton if the Patriots decide to move on from him, or probably actually I would probably draft another quarterback in say the 4th round. I think that's like a good enough round where it's not just like a joke 6th, 7th rounder. But I think would draft another quarterback because you don't know what you're going to get in Burrow when he comes back. Obviously, you want to hope and pray that he comes back and he's healthy and he's good again, but you just don't know. I get it, and I wouldn't condone this at all, but like, what if Cincinnati ended up with the number 2 pick and they could get Fields? And then what if it comes back that like by the time the draft rolls around, that Burrow's knee is not looking too good?
Yeah.
It's like again, I wouldn't draft Justin Fields because I still think Burrow's gonna be fine, but you just never know. It's such a crazy sport, and as we've seen in the NFL, you're going nowhere without a quarterback. Like 100%, you're not doing anything without a quarterback. You could say what you want about these game managing quarterbacks and stuff like that, that they're propped up by their good defenses. They're still above average quarterbacks. You can't take that away from them. And even if they don't, they might not throw for 4,000 yards, but if they don't turn the ball over, I'd say that means they're probably a pretty good quarterback. So they're going to have a lot of interesting kind of ways to go about it. I definitely would heavily invest in that offensive line because their offensive line is so bad. And
yeah, even before he got
like,
hurt, we saw this injury coming. If you use hindsight, if hindsight was 2020, like we saw this injury coming because their offensive line was just paper thin.
Yeah, it's paper thin. The guys that they even have starting are not very good. They didn't really invest much of anything into that. So if their first round pick isn't Penei Sewell, I think they're doing it wrong. And I know they're probably going to get baited into like maybe taking a Jamar Chase, that young stud kind of sexy position at wide receiver. But you got to build this.
They don't have a quarterback anymore.
You have to build this man a brick wall because Joe Burrow or any quarterback, I think for that matter, throwing the ball like 70 times a game. Like he was throwing it way too many times. It's like, what are we doing? And then you're obviously just putting your quarterback at more risk of injury the more times he kind of drops back, and he's just fighting for his life out there. And honestly, a quick segue we could do that we kind of talked about is where the discussion of, all right, a rookie quarterback, do you throw him into the fire or do you kind of let him sit? This is one of those situations where people may say, yeah, I want to throw my quarterback into the fire, but are you going to do that with absolutely horrendous and borderline dangerous offensive line?
Yeah.
That's a question now that many people and organizations are going to have to ask themselves.
Yeah, this is definitely a learning experience, I think, not only for the Bengals, but the entire league. I'm a proponent, and I've said this on the show, if you draft your guy and you think he's the guy, put him out there.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be under the circumstance that you have faith in your offensive line to keep him alive and to keep him healthy. And, looking back, it was probably not how the Cincinnati Bengals thought their offensive line would be. I think even the brightest of optimists about the Cincinnati offensive line probably would have told you that, they're not great. So that's something that, the Bengals need to focus in on. And you said previously about, the first round pick for the Bengals this year. If Burrow stayed healthy the rest of this year, they could have, justified getting that top wide receiver and maybe using their free agent cap space on a veteran offensive lineman or two and get, sexy, weapon for Joe Burrow that he hasn't had in his rookie year. Now it's completely off the table. Because why would you draft a wide receiver? Who's going to throw him the football?
And even
when
in Burrow
the year after that, you still don't know who's throwing him the football.
And even if it is Burrow, what's the point of having this stud wide receiver if your line can't block? Then you don't allow these receivers to kind of do anything. And again, what we've talked about all year is basically that, and we're both in agreement that the games are won in the trenches, and your offense especially, it starts in the trenches. If you can't block, you're not going to be able to pass the ball or do any plays that you want to do. You're going to have to get the ball out in 2 seconds, or else you're going to get sacked. And if you get sacked, you're obviously not completing passes. So if you don't build up that line, you're not going to get a fraction of what Joe Burrow can be.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, the 2022 season when Burrow most likely will come back, like the Vikings had a similar issue. Mm-hmm. The Vikings lost Bridgewater. It was late in the season. I don't know when exactly it was, but he got such a bad leg injury, just like Burrow did, and Bridgewater never played for the Vikings ever again. I don't think it's going to be that, drastic, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Bengals are like, we took you number one and we love you, and we love you because obviously we loved you enough to take you number one, but just the nature of the NFL is that you have these devastating injuries and you're just not the same again. And as, gruesome and as like kind of mean as it would be, the Bengals are in the business of winning football games. And if either in the next draft or the draft after that, if they see a quarterback and say, this is a healthy guy that's going to help us win games, or we believe that, they might take him because it's an insulting thing to say, and I don't like saying it. Right now, Burrow is damaged goods right now because
Yeah,
it's a bad thing to say, and I hate saying it
yeah,
again,
I
but
I know.
it's the nature of what that injury is, and
Yeah,
you hate seeing that happen, but unfortunately, that's just the nature of reality right now. And
yeah,
I will be the first one online for a Burrow revenge tour.
yeah,
I would love that, but
yeah.
you have to be open to all possibilities if you're the Bengals because you've been so bad for so long. Even
Hmm.
when you've made the playoffs, especially under Marvin Lewis all those years, you got bounced in the first round year after year after year, and that fan base is running out of patience. So,
Yeah, I mean, again,
it's
as they
rough.
should be.
Yeah.
It's very. It's last. It's very. It's very similar. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. It's very similar to like a pitcher who gets Tommy John. Like it's kind of like a freak injury, but you have to kind of understand it because you don't really know how they're going to be when you come back, and you pray that they're the same as they were before they got injured, but you just never know, and you have to have a contingency plan in play now. You cannot dismiss it and put all your chips in the basket saying that he's going to be fine, he's going to be perfect. You just
Yeah, and
can't.
it's tough because you're a quarterback. Like the Giants with Barkley, they could survive a running back. Like you really
Yes.
can't
Yeah.
survive when your franchise quarterback goes down. And even your analogy with pitching, there's still four other guys that are going to pick up the slack for you.
Exactly.
This is the worst thing that could happen to a football team. I don't think there's a worse thing that could happen to a football
No,
team.
100%. You lose
So
your star quarterback.
exactly. So we'll see what happens with the Bengals moving forward, not only this year, but next year and the year after
Mhm.
that. So something to keep an eye on. We're
Definitely.
going to move on to a team that does not have a quarterback issue at all, like the complete opposite. And that's the Kansas City Chiefs and
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes. So they beat the Raiders. The Raiders, they fight, man. They fight.
They look
And
pretty
they, and they're on the outside looking in with the playoffs, I believe, right now because the AFC is so loaded. But they might want to
yeah,
be. They might be one of the better teams ever to not make the playoffs. They're a really
yeah.
good team, and they should be given credit for beating the Chiefs on the road and
Mm-hmm.
then fighting them on Sunday Night Football on Sunday night. But when Witten scores the touchdown at the end to put the Raiders up with around 90 seconds, whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
there was no doubt in my mind that the Chiefs were still going to win that game.
Yeah.
And Mahomes went down the field like automatic, you know, like he was playing against children. It was just ridiculous.
It
So I don't think that shocked anybody what happened on Sunday night.
Yeah, no, it's the game is too easy for this team. I don't understand like what other defenses and teams can do to stop it. Because you even look at the last touchdown, Travis Kelsey was wide open. He was
Mhm.
wide open. They literally scored within like a minute and 20 seconds, and they still left probably 20, 30 seconds on the clock. So realistically, if you don't have the ball to end the game, you're not beating the Chiefs. You
Yeah.
100% are not. Again, I really don't know what come the playoffs, like who's stopping them right now? And
Yeah, I was at lunch with a friend today and he was like, "Oh, Steelers, they might go undefeated." I'm like, "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't see them beating the Chiefs.
yeah,
I really don't."
that offense is just it's just too dynamic. Like
And something they said on the broadcast, Matt, and I completely agree with this, and I'd never thought about it until I think Chris Collinsworth said it.
Mhm.
In today's NFL, the old adage where defense wins championships and defense wins you games, that's not true anymore. These offenses are just way too good
Yeah,
that I would rather my team with 2 minutes left in the football game be down with the ball than up without it.
that is probably the coolest question I think I've heard in the scheme of football. Like I've never heard anything like that. And honestly, when I think about that too, like if I'm the Dolphins right now, I'd rather be a team that has to stop someone because their defense is a little bit better. But when you pose the question like that, it really makes me think about like when you look at the landscape of each team, like kind of which plays a favor. Let's run down the scenario. AFC Championship Chiefs are all have the ball and they're down say 2 points and they have to score a field goal to win the game against the Steelers. Are they getting that field goal? I'd say probably 99 times out of 100, yes.
Yeah. And even though the Steelers have one of the best defenses in the league, if not the best defense in the league, I take Mahomes over the Pittsburgh defense. Like, I just think
Yeah,
that's the way the NFL works now. I don't think I'm not saying nothing against the Pittsburgh defense or not anything against defense in general, because obviously you need a good defense to be
Mhm.
successful in the NFL, because there are 58 other minutes in a game that you need to account for, and your defense needs to play well. But those 2 minute drives that the Bradys and the Rodgers and the Wilsons and the Mahomes, they've perfected it to a science
yeah.
where it's like impossible to stop them. Like, you can't do it.
Yeah, this Chiefs offense, I feel like gives me shades of what the Warriors did for basketball, which is popping threes and just kind of exploding in offenses in everybody's face. And the Chiefs offense is something that teams can't replicate. Like you could see like the Packers, who obviously they're a very air raid pass friendly team, but the Chiefs just do everything great. They just do everything great. Their running backs run well and they catch passes great. They have a nice trio of running backs with Edwards and then Edwards-Helaire and then Bell and the other guy Williams on the as the third string. And obviously you have Mahomes, who can do anything he wants for the ball. They have these crazy wildcat formations where Travis Kelce is even taking the snaps. Like it's just absolutely ridiculous what they're doing on offenses in the NFL, and they're literally just making defenses look silly. Like they must be averaging at least 28 points a game at the minimum. And again, you don't see anyone really stopping them because the Raiders' defense isn't that bad by any means. They have a pretty good
No.
defense, so it's not like they're facing the Jets and putting up 40 points as expected. No, they're putting up points on everybody right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's just he has so many weapons. He has Kelsey, he has Tyreek Hill, he has Hilaire, he has Bell now. He has, all these guys that he has at his disposal, and to put on top of that, he's the best himself.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a
he
perfect.
doesn't need the weapons that he already has, and he already has, all those weapons. He has probably one of the best head coaches in the NFL.
Mhm.
Um, we talked about, the word dynasty is thrown out in sports a lot.
Yeah,
The Warriors just got done with their dynasty. The Patriots just got done with their dynasty. Obviously, the Yankees had their dynasty back in the late 90s. But if any team is going to start a new dynasty, it's this team,
yeah,
because, they're just so much better than everyone. I think a Steelers matchup would be really, really fascinating. And right now, it's looking like the Steelers would have home field
hmm
in that, because, the Steelers might go 16-0. Their schedule, is
yeah,
pretty. It's not that hard
yeah,
going the rest of the way. But even on the road in Pittsburgh, and it won't be a packed house, obviously.
hmm
I still would. I'd still give the edge over Mahomes over the Steelers, and
yeah.
that's it. And I'm not even like thinking about it. Like, I think it's just automatic to me, and that's saying a lot, because that team has Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin, and obviously both are going to the Hall of Fame. It's just a real testament to what they built in Kansas City. Just so much dominance. They really built it the right way.
It really is. It's just a perfect storm and it's just a perfect assortment of players. And they have like their offense is just filled with younger guys too. So it's not like we're the Steelers where hey you might lose Big Ben in a couple of years if not next year. Patty Mahomes isn't going anywhere for the next 9-10 years. Tyreek Hill same thing, and then Travis Kelce same thing, and all these other kind of gadget guys you could build around them. They're going to keep bolstering that offensive line because they don't really have any needs anywhere else. So it's just a perfect situation for them. And again, it starts with the quarterback and it starts with the head coach too, that they're putting them in positions to win. Like they literally could have a bunch of high schoolers be playing defense, and I think they'd still win, as
Yeah.
we saw in the Super Bowl, and as you're going to see as they probably win this Super Bowl too.
He's making like $1 billion. You can make the argument that he's still underpaid. That's how good he is.
Yeah,
Like, I was thinking about it and I tweeted it out when the game ended. Like, imagine like being him. Like, it's just so easy.
again, he
Like,
doesn't look like he's playing like an actual professional sport. It
and
looks like he's just
he's
playing
also
flag
so
football.
likable. Like, he's
Oh
such a cool dude.
yeah. Mhm.
And he always comes up. He's like the NFL's Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
Like, he's that kind of personality.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
it's just,
it's awesome.
it's sick, because, we went through these like decade and a half of talking about Brady and Manning. And then Brady's not even retired yet, and Mahomes is already like on his way to like passing them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like once Michael Jordan retired, we got LeBron and Kobe, and once Brady and Manning retired, we got Mahomes. Like, it just goes on and on and on. So I don't know. The kid's just fantastic. I don't know. There's not a lot to say about it.
Yeah, this is his league, and this is the Chiefs' basically title to lose. And again, the way it looks right now, I'd be a fool to bet against them.
Yeah. So Well, I mean, we have to talk about Mahomes every week because it's just the way the NFL works. The NFL revolves around Mahomes.
Yeah.
And Super Bowl champion, and I'd be shocked if he doesn't add another at least 2
Yeah.
by the time he's all done. And
100%.
He's 24, so he's going to be around for a long time.
He might be playing baseball soon enough.
No, maybe he pulls a Michael Jordan and just gets bored. Right?
There's no more money left for him.
I don't know. I don't think he'll ever walk away from that money.
No.
But I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it if he decided, hey, I want to play baseball now. I wouldn't bet against him. I bet against Tim Tebow. I don't think he'll ever make it. But I'm not gonna bet against Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody I will bet against and will bet against the day I die. I'm so good at these segues today. I'm killing it. So 4 years as a communication major does to you. Carson Wentz. I tweeted a clip of the show last week on Sunday when he was playing against the Browns. Stinks. He's just bad. And I think Philadelphia fans are starting to get it. I think the most hard-headed Philly fans, there's a lot of them. I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
We're a lot like, nobody's the coach. It's the coach. It's the injuries. It's this. It's that. I think last week against the Browns and what he did there is kind of, the awakening for Philadelphia to say, hey, maybe this guy isn't that good.
Yeah. No, again, you just not to always be a stat looker, but I mean, he's got 14 touchdowns and 14 interceptions on the years. But one stat I really like is QBR, and he's got a 48.2 QBR, which puts him at 27th in the NFL, which probably makes sense because he's been one of the worst quarterbacks, I think, in the NFL. And obviously the excuses of, oh, well, the wide receivers aren't that good and the offensive line and this and that, some valid, some not. But when you just watch him play, like you just look at what he does, he just looks defeated. Like he just doesn't look like there's just nothing there that kind of makes you say, damn, like I want Carson Wentz as my quarterback. Like I love that out of him. Like I'm not seeing much out of him. And it's weird that you have Jalen Hurts sitting behind him and they don't want to pull the trigger. And it's funny because we kind of talked about and prefaced how if you go to that rookie quarterback, like it's his. What if it wasn't necessarily? What if it was a week-to-week kind of battle? That's kind of the way you're seeing it now. Like you have 2 good quarterbacks. I mean, and Carson Wentz is playing terribly. I still think he can be a good quarterback, but he's playing terrible. Why not see what Jalen Hurts has? Like why not? Give him one game.
Does he not know the playbook? He has to know the playbook by now.
You drafted him in the 2nd round, so you obviously think he's more than just
you drafted him in April. I assume the day after the draft, you're going to fax him every single play that you have. He has to know the ins and outs of the offense by now as the backup quarterback. Because as the backup quarterback, your job is to prepare like you're the starter in case something happens, like what happened with Joe Burrow, like what happened with Tua struggling, and then you have to come in. Mm-hmm. But they seem to only use him on these gimmicky plays where you have Wentz lined up as a wide receiver. Like, that doesn't help you. It reminds me of when the Jets had Sanchez, and then they brought in Tebow, and then it was just a complete mess. Yeah. Obviously, Hurts is better than Tim Tebow, and he's more of a threat to Wentz than Tim Tebow was to Mark Sanchez. But there's no reason to use a 2nd round pick on a guy and not use him, especially when the guy that's starting is terrible. Now, I know Philadelphia has a lot of money tied up into him, and they really like him. But sometimes it's just not your year. Sometimes it's just not your game. We saw it. We're Yankee fans. We saw it this year with Gary Sanchez. Gary Sanchez in the playoffs did not play 4 out of the 5 games, and he did not get an at-bat in the elimination game in Game 5. He didn't get an at-bat.
Yeah.
So sometimes, and Yankees like Gary Sanchez, and they still do.
Exactly.
The same applies to the NFL.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just not your game.
Yeah.
And by halftime on Sunday, it was apparent that it was not Carson Wentz's game. Mm-hmm. And the Eagles, even though they're in first place in this division, and even though everybody else in the division sucks as well as them, they're still in the driver's seat in first place because of that tie.
Yeah.
So you have to do something. Yeah. You have to mix it up, because if this keeps happening, the Eagles aren't going to win the division. The Giants, Washington, or Dallas will. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what else they want. The interceptions were terrible.
Oh my God!
He gets sacked all the time, which is on the line, but it's on him too. He has to throw the ball away too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where he's looks like a deer in headlights.
He's just holding it too long.
but I would love to hear the justification of why Hurts is not in.
Yeah.
I can't think of a reason other than we're paying Wentz a lot of money, and that's why he's playing.
And that's what I hate.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate. And again, it's
that's their fault. That's if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm like, that's your fault, not mine.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, you have to say, listen, I don't give a shit whether even if you draft him in the first round, if there's a better option on your team, you play that guy. So same thing, this situation. Yeah, you're paying him going to be like $35 million next year that they can't really get rid of. Just because you're paying him, you still want to put the best guy out there, like your stars and stuff like that. Like if you draft this rookie and you think he's better, just put him out there. Who cares? You're not going to get rid of the money. It's not going to come off your books. And it doesn't like just playing him just out of pride purposes, just like, oh, well, we invested in him, so we're going to play him. Like that to me is a little stupid. And their game next week is against the Seahawks on Monday night, a team that doesn't really have a good defense. Why not give Jalen Hurts one game? Just one game. What's the harm? And maybe you wake up Carson Wentz, and then and if he can't handle a benching, even though it's deservedly so, then maybe he's not your quarterback anyway. And then we've talked a lot about like sometimes where confidence and stuff like that. That I think applies to, and you I think agree to like more so rookies and stuff like that. Carson Wentz is you collected the bag already, you got paid, and you're going to continue to get paid. You got to earn it now. And we drafted a guy, so we clearly thought that hey, maybe this situation was gonna happen. Put Hurts in. Why not?
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like they're going to Seattle, and you can say what you want about the Seahawks and their defense and how they've struggled, in this middle part of the season, but that's still an intimidating place to play, even without fans. I obviously don't think Wentz is gonna sit in that game to start, but if he has another beginning to that game, reminiscent of what we saw against the Cleveland Browns, which is not the Seattle Seahawks whatsoever. I don't care about, Cleveland's 7-3 record. They don't impress me that much. Baker doesn't impress me. We can talk about that later. If Wentz throws a couple picks in the first and second quarter and you go into halftime and it's, 10-3, 17-3, something like that, you have to put in Hurts because you don't have a very big cushion in the NFC East anymore because Wentz's bad play has allowed the 3-7 Giants, Cowboys, and Washington to get back in it. The reason the Eagles aren't winning this division is solely at this moment, in my opinion, on Carson Wentz's quarterback play. Yeah. Now I know Peterson hasn't been great. I know Peterson's done some things that make you want to blow your head out if you're in Philadelphia. And I know they have a ton of injuries. But you pay quarterbacks over $100 million to cover up those, mistakes from your organization. Like Patrick Mahomes, we just talked about him, is in a perfect situation. If it was less than perfect, he has the ability to make it better and cover up those mistakes. That's what we see from Russell Wilson. That's what we see from, Drew Brees years. Aaron Rodgers has dealt with, Mike McCarthy, like falling off a cliff in terms of being a head coach and his organization not surrounding him with anybody. And he still goes to the NFC Championship game every single year. Yeah. Wentz hasn't done that. And Wentz really, other than that one huge year he had, hasn't done that. He's been hurt. He's been ineffective. If I'm a Philadelphia Eagle fan or I'm in the organization, I don't owe him anything anymore. No, I really don't. I gave him his money and I said, be a top 10 quarterback. And he hasn't been that. And I was having a conversation with a couple of my friends from Monmouth about who are, one of them is an Eagle fan, big Eagle fan. Shout out to Ryan. And he was like, how many quarterbacks in the NFL would you take before you take Wentz? And you can rattle off a dozen quarterbacks before you get to Wentz.
It's one of those things where it's like, listen, even looking past 2020 season, looking into 2021, I'd rather see Hurts and see what he's got. But even in this season too, and this is why it's so important for them, I think, to go to Hurts, is because you still have a shot to make the playoffs, and your last two games for the Eagles are against the Cowboys and Washington, so divisional games. Why not give teams a different look at quarterback, and you make the team like a Seahawks and then a Packers and then a Saints have to game plan now for Jalen Hurts? Like I think that kind of move and that QB change might deceive coaches and defenses enough because they're not going to have really film on these guys. So maybe that's probably your best bet, I think, to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and they have nothing to lose because they're currently in a complete free fall.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you put in Hurts and they lose all those games, they were going to lose them anyway.
That's what I mean.
So
even if you
I have,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I have the texts from the group chat that I'm in about the quarterbacks that you take over Mahomes. So let's just go down the list. Over Wentz, not Mahomes is first on the list. So Mahomes, you take over him.
Yeah.
So one game, you have one game. Mahomes, yes. Yeah. Rodgers, yes. Wilson, Big Ben, Brady, right?
Yeah.
Breeze. Stop me if you disagree. Allen, Tua, Jackson, Burrow, Tannehill, Herbert, Prescott, Jones, Kyler, Watson, Ryan, Stafford, Carr, Bridgewater. You taking Wentz over any of those guys?
I'm taking the only one. I would say you could even add in Fitz.
Yeah, I put in Fitzpatrick.
It's what is
all these backups?
What is honestly, like people might even say Jameis. Yeah, it's crazy, but and this is the thing. Like if you were to kind of have this discussion, some people are like, oh well, Carson Wentz is good, and they would reference kind of stuff he did, but like what is he doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of goes into like when I try to evaluate quarterbacks and just players in all sports is like, listen, I don't really care what they did 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I care what they are
doing. How far removed are we from his big one huge year?
Well, it has to be what,
4 years?
Close to 4?
That's
like
a lot.
That 3 years ago is kind of like my threshold for, all right, maybe I'll still count that. 2 years ago, I like to see. And then
I mean, if it's about what have you done, then Cam Newton's still on the Panthers.
Yeah, no,
right?
I agree. And then, I mean, if you look at that kind of what have you done, that's kind of similar situation where the Giants have been where they've been the last 2 years. Luckily, it's looking up for them, and we'll get into that later. But those kind of down years is because you're kind of relying on people to be who they were, and they're not doing anything for you right now. And that's why it's so important for them to look at it and just be like, listen, Carson Wentz, you're not doing anything for us right now. That's not to say you can't come out and earn a job either at the end of the season, the next week, or the next year. But for right now, I don't think you give us the best chance to win. I really don't. I don't think you could justify that he does.
Yeah, and with the Giants, like, it was the wrong thing to do, but you can understand it. Eli, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's the most famous player your franchise has ever had. Won 2 Super Bowls, all this, and you get Barkley and you get Ingram, and you're like, we're going to get one more run for him. Mm-hmm. And it didn't work. And, sometimes things like that don't work. Yeah. And they finally moved on when they should have probably moved on 3 years before in hindsight. But Wentz isn't that. Wentz isn't an all-time great Hall of Fame guy. Mm-hmm. He's not, he technically he is a Super Bowl winner, but Foles was the guy there.
Yeah.
So other than money, there's no sentimental thing that's clinging the Eagles to keeping Wentz as the starting quarterback right now. Yeah. You got to really judge it by his performance on the field right now in 2020. And really, if you want to go back to 2019, even though they won the division was bad and the Eagles didn't have a fantastic year by any means last year. And he got hurt in the playoffs. So there's that. So like pull the plug if you're Philadelphia, because what else do you have to lose?
Yeah, no, again, that's what I mean. Like for Doug Marrone, like we talked about, it's like, Doug Peterson, my bad. It's like, what are you doing right now? Like, it's like, are you really are going to ride or die with Carson
Wentz? His job's on the line.
100%.
He cannot be loyal to Carson Wentz because Carson Wentz might get him fired too.
And that's what I mean. So why not at least make a bold move? Because a bold move is better than no move in my mind. In this situation right now, you have 3 friggin' wins. And the only reason you're in the lead for the division is because you have that tie. Like the Giants easily should have beat the Eagles that first game.
Yeah.
And they have 2 wins. Maybe Doug Peterson is fired. Who knows? So it's like, what are you waiting for? I really don't. That's why I think it might not even happen, because what are you waiting for?
I don't know what you're waiting for. I think they're just waiting for him to just have it click, but sometimes it just doesn't. Yeah. And that's not to say it won't happen next year. But right now, when you really, and if you really think about it, with the injuries, you have, your $100 million quarterback and your Super Bowl winning head coach, and you look at everybody else in the division, Giants, new head coach, second year quarterback, Washington, just a mess, right?
Yeah.
And then the Cowboys, first year head coach, that isn't the most popular guy right now. People aren't thrilled with what McCarthy's done.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dak is hurt. So if you think about it, the Eagles should be winning this division by like 4 or 5 games.
Agreed.
Like the talent is far and away the Eagles and then everybody else. They should not be, in the midst of a free fall where they miss the playoffs and miss the division entirely and lose it to a 6-10 team. That shouldn't be the case. And that's the way it is. And then we can move this into a discussion about the NFC East because we do that every week for me, because, that's the division that I love for whatever reason. The Eagles lose, and then the Cowboys and Washington win. So it's 3-6-1 for Philly, and it's 3-7 for everybody else. And we enter Thanksgiving, a huge Cowboys and Washington game on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody can win this division, even Washington. I thought Washington was out of it. They didn't cross my mind the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
They can win it with Alex Smith.
Yeah,
there's no reason they can't.
If they give him a shot again.
And that Week 17 game between the Giants and Cowboys can be the NBC winning your in game. Like it's crazy. And if you're the Giants, you're thrilled with the Eagles losing.
Oh my god!
Because
it's just the whole thing is just it's so funny, and that's why I think the Giants are in a good spot to really take control. I really do, because their defense again is built the right way. They have that strong pressure up the middle, and we always give credit to Blake Martinez and that signing. And from a momentum standpoint, they just had a nice bye week, so they're well rested. Who do they play this week?
They play the Bengals with no Burrow.
So there you go. So
it's falling into place for them.
Yeah, so that's a big should be win for them. If it's not, we will touch upon it next week's episode. But we're gonna assume it's.
I'll officially cancel the Giants if they lose to the Bengals. I wouldn't even entertain them still squeaking into the playoffs if they lose to the Bengals. If they want to make the playoffs, they need to beat the Bengals. They need to beat the Browns, and they need one other game. I would like 2.
Yeah. No, again, and as you should. And when you look at the kind of the standings, and you're looking at like the 2021 draft, Dallas is 3-7. They're sitting at the 4th pick. Washington 3-7 at the 5th pick. Giants at 3-7 with the 7th pick. And then by default, Philadelphia is that 3-6-1, and they're projected that 19th pick. So that to me is that is crazy when you really think about it. That whoever wins this division is going to jump close to 20 spots. And then who knows what they do in the playoffs.
Now, that begs the question, is winning this division worth it?
I mean, I would say for
or is it a different answer for each team?
I was gonna say I think it's different for each team. I think the Giants, yes, you are right now in that taking a step up in the rebuild. So you want to take that next step and you want to win that division. By all means necessary. It doesn't matter, even though the teams are going to be shitty and it might even be 6 wins. Screw it. Get Daniel Jones a division title. With the Eagles, it's like with where your salary cap is and how much money you have being paid out. Like, is winning a division? It's like, what does that do? It honestly, it's basically this is one last run because there's nothing really being sustained there.
I think it depends within the Eagles organization if you ask. I think if you're like the GM or the owner, I don't think it makes a difference, because if you win the division, great. If not, we get the draft pick. If you're Doug Peterson, you might get fired if you don't win the division.
Yeah.
If you're Carson Wentz, you might get replaced. Well, they're not going to replace him because, he has that contract that makes it impossible. But you know what I mean? They'll get bring in someone to compete with him.
Yeah.
So I think the Eagles, it could go either way, whichever you want.
Yeah, and like the Cowboys, obviously, we know the reason they're not winning is because they don't have Dak. So
if Dak was healthy, they'd win the division.
Exactly. So to them, they're probably like, hey, listen, I'd rather have a better draft pick. And same thing with Washington too, because they need to find a quarterback. And odds are you have a better chance doing that than the top 5 picks opposed to the 19th pick. Yeah. So I think definitely this would be awesome for the Giants to just go out there and claim what is basically almost being handed to them. It's literally Daniel Jones and Joe Judge, take this from me, because Dak got hurt. So we can already write the Cowboys out basically. Washington is, again, they're not bad, but they're still not good.
I don't think anyone actually, even though they're there, I don't think anyone actually believes that they're going to be the one at the end.
They have Alex Smith at quarterback, and not really to shit on him too much, but he's not nearly what Daniel Jones is. We've already kind of talked a good amount about Daniel Jones and how he may not even be the guy, but he's showing us some improvement, which is awesome.
He's been better. I will give him that. I've been critical of Daniel Jones, but he has been better.
He's been better, and arguably is Daniel Jones the best quarterback in the division right now?
Right now, today, based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks, by default, yes.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
it's tough to argue.
Best quarterback in the NFC East isn't exactly like putting yourself up against Patrick Mahomes.
Agreed.
But the question is the question, right? And he's the least bad right now. That's the way I'll put it. He's the least bad. And sometimes that's probably not even fair to him, because he's been pretty good. He's been the most decent quarterback over the last few weeks. He hasn't turned the ball over. Yeah. Now, what a concept is that? You don't turn the ball over, you win. That's something that he should keep in mind moving forward.
That's something we talked about earlier. I think it was right after week 1. I said going into the season, I'm really going to look at turnover differential and how that basically dictates the game. And I mean, we keep seeing it. You look at the Ravens, when they lose, Lamar turns it over. When they win, he doesn't turn it over. When the Giants win, Daniel Jones does not turn it over. When they lose, he turns it over multiple times. Same thing with Carson Wentz and the Eagles. Like you rarely see someone fumble it or throw 3 picks and then win a ball game. That just, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Really wrapping things up in the NFC East this week. Thursday's game with the Cowboys and Washington. I think as a Giants fan, I would want Washington to win this game, because the Giants already swept Washington and they lost against Dallas. So even if Washington gets to 4-7, assuming the Giants beat the Bengals, which, they should, knock on wood, they would still be in first place based on the tiebreaker, assuming Philadelphia then loses on Monday night. So by the time we record this show next week, the Giants could be in first place if it breaks that way. If the Washington and Philadelphia lose this week and the Giants win against Cincinnati, the Giants are in sole possession of first place.
Yeah.
Now, who would have thought?
It's such a screwed up division. It really is. But somebody's got to take it. Somebody has to. And the way I see it, it's the Giants. They have to seize this. They just, by all means, have to. Again, you might see a late push from Dallas, but again, I still think that Week 17 game is going to be winner's going to take the division. And I hope.
And really, any of these teams that win the division, even though they're all bad, and we can all agree that the NFC East does not deserve a playoff representative, but that's just the way it works in the NFL and at all sports. The division winner makes the playoffs.
Yeah.
You see that if the season ended today, the NFC East winner would host the Buccaneers, right? It's not, in my opinion, it's not out of the realm of possibility that any of these 4 NFC East teams, for as bad as they've been and how the entire division's a laughingstock and everyone just moans about how they're going to have a playoff team, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but by how inconsistent Tampa has been, that they can actually pull off that upset. And when we saw it before, the Seahawks at 7-9 beat the Saints. We remember that classic Marshawn Lynch beast mode run, and they won. And then they went to the divisional game. I think they got destroyed by the Bears the next week, or the Packers, whatever it was. But the Buccaneers aren't that good right now. And Brady is doing, he's good, he's fine, but he's not Brady of the Patriots. And he's done things that make you say, hey, yeah, this guy's 43 years old.
Yeah, no, it's when you look at his game, the 2 picks he had to Jordan Fuller, Ultapan native, shout out to him.
Yeah, right across the street.
Yeah, they were awful throws by him, just terrible. And one of them he was going down a game, would have been game-winning drive, and he throws a terrible interception. You're like, where is he throwing the ball? So it's one of those things where you're seeing, like that's a very inconsistent, hot and cold offense, and even their defense too. Like some
Yeah.
games they show up and they're awesome, and then other games they show up and they're just terrible. So who knows? Maybe when if they play the Giants in a home game, especially in New York, maybe they win that day. Who knows?
Oh, it's going to be freezing cold at MetLife.
Yeah.
It would be freezing cold in Philadelphia. It would be freezing cold in Washington. Dallas, you'd have the neutral
Dome,
site
yeah.
with the dome, and it's Texas anyway, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But that's not Brady's. Well, he played forever in New England, but that's not the Buccaneers element.
Yeah.
We're playing in Tampa, and these primetime games that Tampa's been in, they haven't played well.
Yeah.
And people laugh at me when I say, "Oh, on primetime they're not good," because it's such a small sample size, but it does matter. I really think how you play in primetime is important. It's not just something that, hey, it's just a coincidence.
Right.
Everybody's watching you, and these are human beings playing, and they know that.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, a team led by Tom Brady, they lost on Monday night yesterday. They played really bad and maybe should have lost against the Giants on Monday night. And the Saints games that were on the 4:25 games, the Sunday night games, they haven't played well.
Yeah. So again, it's one of those things where maybe that'll be the Giants' day. And again, maybe we're kind of closing in on maybe we're seeing Brady for the last time. Like we really don't know, but just
what's his contract? 2 years?
Yeah, it's only 2 years. So I mean, again, you'll probably see those 2 years.
He wants to play till when? 45?
Yeah, I could see maybe he has some sort of 1 year send off and with the Patriots, but they're probably going to draft a quarterback because they need something.
I think it's funny that there was this ugly divorce between Belichick and Kraft and Brady,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all miserable.
Yeah.
Normally, when there's a divorce, one goes off and she's fantastic and she whatever.
Yeah.
Both of them are completely miserable without each other.
It makes you wonder why they even did it in the first place.
I think people are like, oh, I can do it without you, and they're too stubborn to realize that the only way it works is when they're together. I don't know, but it hasn't worked, especially this year. It hasn't worked. Who knows going forward? Because the Patriots, this was going to be one of those years anyway. Mm-hmm. I think people are more surprised that Brady's struggled.
Yes, I agree too. I was expecting Brady in that offense. I mean, I was like, they're probably going to go to the Super Bowl, or they're at least going to go to the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
As of right now, one of my friends, I'll pull up the text message right now. One of my friends, Nico, asked. He said, he's like, the NFC kind of all shook up this week, and I was like, I agree. He's like, Saints, Seahawks, Packers, Rams, Bucks. He's like, who's the favorite? And I basically said, I was like, not the Seahawks. The Saints, again, without Breeze, it's like, even though Taysom Hill did decently well, probably not them. I said kind of Packers and Bucks tied up, and then I said kind of the Rams are now making a run up too, and obviously Tyler with the Cardinals. So it really is interesting, and the Bucks really they have a lot to prove. I really do think so.
I think any of those teams can make any of the teams can make the Super Bowl other than the NFC East team. I'd be shocked if the NFC East team made the Super Bowl. I'd jump off a building.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
but like, you can make the argument that any of the teams can make the Super Bowl. You could also make the argument that any of those teams can lose their first playoff game. And it's not like that in the AFC. The AFC, it's kind of the Chiefs and the Steelers, and let's see who can challenge them, right?
Yeah.
But the NFC, I guess I'd go Packers if I had to. If there was a gun against my head and said pick an NFC team, I would probably say the Packers. But I'm not confident in the Packers.
No, that's what I mean. Because I mean, they just lost. I mean, they just lost a close game to the Colts, and the Colts were a team that we said were pretenders.
And how ugly was that game?
Yeah, that was
oh
tough.
My God.
That was a game where it's like if you're a Packers fan,
there was like 8 holding penalties in a row. Like the Colts were like giving them the game.
Yeah, that was some. I mean, you had that almost fumble too. And the play was like 4th and whatever, or 3rd and whatever. It's like, why are you throwing the ball? Like, you're 3rd and like 25. It's like, just run the ball, because he almost fumbled it and basically lost the game. But yeah, it's the Rams are a team that I'm really kind of trying to keep an eye on, because their offense is good, but it is very. It's not. I'm trying to think. It doesn't do well if you game plan against it. I know you could say that's obvious, but I don't think kind of McVay does a good enough job yet with adjusting at halftime, because you saw against the Dolphins, at least I saw firsthand, they did the same thing they did in the first half and the second half, and they had no success, but they weren't willing to change. So like what their offense is that game is what it's going to be, for whether it be better or worse. So until that offense can kind of adjust to certain situations, I don't think they're the best, but if they can, that defense is obviously sick.
And we all of us forget they were in the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
I know it's
Like
crazy.
isn't it amazing? Like that's like that's like the forgotten Super Bowl team because it was just so out of nowhere, and it was such like a defense, driven.
13-3
It was like
game.
a boring game, and it was a
100%.
defensive game,
Yeah.
and even the whole year, the Rams, it was all defense, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, why not the Rams? Like,
I agree.
nobody's running away with it, like
No.
the AFC is.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree. When you look at kind of like the teams in the hunt for the NFC, it's like obviously you have the whole NFC East with the division, and then you have some teams with like 5 wins. Where the AFC, it's like the wild card teams have 7 wins right now. So I mean, again, it is what it is. But you're definitely seeing that upper echelon of teams in the AFC is a little higher than in the NFC right now.
all right, let's wrap this up talking about your Dolphins. Kind of brought back down to reality on Sunday. We were last few weeks, 3 weeks on the show, we were talking about how this is like amazing and how like the Dolphins are like going to the Super Bowl and how this is the big thing.
Yeah.
And Tua is just the next prodigy, but that's not the way that sports work. Sometimes you get hit.
Yeah.
And on the road against Denver, I still expected the Miami to win this game because I think they're a better team than Denver.
Yeah.
But this is the first kind of roadblock in Tua's career that was, inevitable. But it still hurts when you're in such a heated playoff race. And when you're in the mix, those losses hurt. Whereas if this was a season that, the Dolphins were like 2-7 and they had Tua out there and you lose the game, this is a rebuild. But because you're in the playoff hunt, it stings.
Yeah. So with all that being said, again, it was a game of that. Yeah, we should have won, and we definitely had some humble pie for dessert. But it's a game where it's almost one of those things where it's like we kind of needed to lose that game. As shitty as it sounds, you're like maybe we needed to just get one loss out of the way to kind of make us remember what it feels like. And not saying that they didn't work hard and stuff like that, but offensively they laid a goose egg. Which is it's awesome though that defensively and then the special teams too, they still did their thing, but that third phase in the offense didn't work out. So it's not like you're panicking. You just need to make some better adjustments on the offensive side of the ball. And then tip of the cap to Vic Fangio and that defense. They threw a lot of looks at Tua that shook him up a little bit. And it's one of those things where going into this season, a lot of people had the Dolphins at 4, 5, 6. I had them at that 7, 8 wins kind of area, and I still think they're going to get there. But what happens is obviously is you have success that you kind of raise your expectations, which I think is fine. I totally think is fine because if you win this game today, you and the Bills are basically in the driver's seat, and if you win the same amount as the Bills do up until Week 17, you're basically you win that Week 17 game, you win the division. So what I saw basically from Tua was what happens when you have kind of a rookie with a limited playbook out there. He had a lot of rookie mistakes. Like right from the bat, he was kind of overthrowing too many guys. He had some happy feet in the pocket a little bit, and then you sprinkle in the wide receivers haven't really gotten open. I mean, Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, although they're good, their average yards per separation is in like the top 20 worst. It's like sub 2 yards of separation. So that's something that we knew going into the season. We didn't really have those kind of burner guys on offense who could create separation and have some yards after catch. Again, that's perfectly fine. We're not that Super Bowl contending team yet. Then you look at I was saying kind of with the playbook and stuff like that, like a lot of fans and stuff were mad that, Fitz came in and he went 12 for 18 and Tua was like 10 for 20 and like the specific passes that they were doing with him and stuff like that. I'm like, well, what do you expect? Like Fitzpatrick is a 15-year vet and he's had 5 years under Chan Gailey's system. Tua is a 4-game veteran. And even prior to that, obviously he was coming off the injury where he had a year off basically of football. So people need to pump the brakes a little bit and realize that this is what was going to happen eventually by putting Tua out there. And I think he handled himself perfectly. Obviously, he got benched. And it was one of those things where as much as I would have wanted to maybe see Tua kind of see what he could do in that fourth quarter 2-minute drill drive, to win that game that day, I think, it made sense to go to Fitzpatrick. So it is.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, obviously what you said is true that, eventually Tua needs to get some real game experience down in the fourth quarter with the 2-minute drill. But right now, if I'm the Dolphins, I'm getting that playoff spot no matter what. Like that's kind of my philosophy now. So if you think that Fitzpatrick is going to get you that win because Tua hasn't been good, we talked about this with Wentz. It wasn't Tua's day.
Yeah.
And what I said this before, once you put the rookie in, he's in, and if you take it out, it's a mess. Where the Dolphins save themselves from that kind of nightmare scenario is when they said immediately, no, Tua's going to play.
Yeah.
Like Tua's the guy.
Yeah.
But just in that situation, you get benched. Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
in baseball, sometimes you make a couple errors at second base. You get benched for the rest of the game. You're still going to go out there the next game because your coach is not going to give up on you that easy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, again, you look at.
I would rather Tua get that 2-minute drive in a game where he's been playing well and he has the confidence in his head to say, hey, I can do this, than in a game where he's 10 for 20 and he hasn't played well. And now all of a sudden, hey, you got to win us the game now.
Yeah, no, it was one of those situations that, it's not that you want to baby him, but it was just for that game, for how the game was going.
They have every right to baby him if they want to, though.
And agreed, and 100%. And I love what Flores did by basically saying, hey, listen, like, you weren't doing that well. It's not all on you. It's a lot of factors. But to win that game in that drive with what was going on, we thought we wanted to put Fitz in. He said, yeah, we need a little bit of a spark. And you almost got that because you drove down. And then obviously that last drive was kind of the reason why you put Tua in and why Fitzpatrick is who he is that he'll get you to the 20, but he'll throw that awful interception where the safety just clearly runs ahead to that game-winning drive. So it is what it is. And then you were talking about with like the errors at second base. Henrik Lundqvist, probably one of the greatest goalies of all time.
Yeah.
There's times he lets up 6 goals in a period. He gets taken out. Is he back out there again tomorrow? Of course. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, Garrett Cole is going to get rocked.
Yeah.
5 days later, he's going back out there.
That's what I mean. So it again, a lot of people were panicking. Right? They're giving up on Tua. I'm like, whoa. I'm like,
yeah,
whoa.
and like in the NFL, as an NFL comp, I was trying to think of one. Brock Osweiler relieved Peyton Manning in some games in that last season. And then they eventually put Peyton back in there and they won the Super Bowl. Yeah. So if you're Tua, you're not like discouraged, especially because they came out almost immediately and said, no, Tua's going to start. It's just for this one like 10-minute stretch. We thought, Fitzpatrick would help us out.
Yeah, it's awesome to see that there is always a level of competition with Brian Flores, and you have to respect that. You just do. Because
the difference between what Miami did and then what Washington did was that Washington was like, they took out Haskins and then they were like, oh, we'll see. And they let it simmer for a couple of days and the media asked questions and then it became a whole thing. And then they ended up never playing him again. Yeah. So what Flores did that was important, and it's important for Tua's confidence for the rest of his career to say, no, this is our guy moving forward starting next week.
Yeah, again, it was literally just, hey, Tua, you had a bad 3.5 quarters, and we took you out for 2 drives basically. And honestly, he probably saved him because he got sacked 6 times. So at some point you're like, oh Jesus Christ, our offensive line at the same token is doing terrible, but you can't take them out. You can't protect them. So it was part of it also I think was just a business decision. They were like, listen, if we keep this guy in, he's probably gonna get killed today. We go back to the drawing board, live to see another day tomorrow. Obviously, again, you lost the game, but it wasn't necessarily all on him. And even if you put Fitz in that whole game, you probably still don't win. So again, it is what it is. But I really liked what I saw from Flores, like we said, and then Tua after the game said the same thing. He's like, listen, like it's a learning experience for me. Like I understand why why the decision was made. He's like anything basically to kind of help the team. It's awesome to see that he understands that I am a rookie and I have basically been out of football for that whole year because of injury, and I'm constantly learning. And that's what you want to see from a 22, 23-year-old kid who's playing quarterback and basically given the keys to the city right now is his willingness to learn and then to overcome adversity. Like there's not a doubt in my mind that we're going to come out against the Jets or even if we play anybody and he's going to play well. I'm not saying he's going to put up 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, but I think he's going to come back and be better than he was yesterday. And really, what else can you ask for?
And I think it's important that they have the Jets and the Bengals coming up the next 2 weeks.
100%.
Like those are games that Tua should be able to handle. You don't want to you don't want this to happen and then the next game be against the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
And then it's just even worse. It just snowballs. But he has an opportunity now before that Chiefs game to get some momentum back and start feeling good about himself again against two teams that, knock on wood, you never say any game's an easy win in the NFL, but 2 games you should win. If you have any aspirations of making the playoffs this year, you have to beat the Jets and you have to beat the Bengals. And then, the Chiefs, let's just whatever happens that week happens. Exactly. As long as everyone's healthy at the end of that one, that's a win for me. And then you got the Patriots and the Raiders and that big game against the Bills. Because all you have to do is be tied with the Bills by the time that comes around, right?
Yep. Again, if we do that and then we beat them and we go one up, then we win the division. And that's something that not a single soul, including myself, thought could happen. So if you do that, I mean, obviously, I think Brian Flores wins Coach of the Year if that happens.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's again, like it's one of those situations that like it made sense. Rarely are we going to say, oh, taking out the rookie quarterback in a situation like that is going to make sense. And I wouldn't doubt if Brian Flores factored in all those things like you just said of who we're playing next week and stuff like that. So again, I think it is what it is. We cannot hit the panic button. People got to relax. Like 4 years from now, no one's going to be like, oh, remember that time Tua got benched for Fitzpatrick in week 11 of the 2020 season against the Broncos? No one's going to give a shit. No one's going to give a shit next week if he comes out and wins. It's such a almost borderline a joke. Like when you watch ESPN, like, oh my God, 1 week, it's like literally the whole 5 weeks we won. Tua is literally better than Herbert. He's better than Burrow. I'm taking Tua. And then,
well, that's how they get their ratings. That's how they do it.
And it's something that I've kind of realized as of late because I've just been watching a ton of the Dolphins in the media, which I haven't seen in forever. And you're seeing just like the flip-flop is just, it's crazy. It's borderline unhealthy to watch. And like, even as like an analyst, it's like, how do you like not to say how do you live with yourself, but it's like, how do you hold yourself accountable? Because every day you change your idea and you change your mind.
It's a lot of, I mean, this is something I've said about, those major market networks for sports. It's a lot of acting. It's a lot of performance-based things like those undisputed first take kind of shows. It's a lot about these analysts being more like actors and entertainers than actual like journalists.
And I think you're smart enough, and I feel like I'm smart enough that you could see the bullshit, and you could see when they do certain segments that they're actually passionate about, that it's real. Yeah. And other times you just see it's bullshit. It's absolutely bullshit.
I think now is there panicking within the fan base, or is the entire fan base kind of like everyone relax? That's all you got to worry about. As long as Dolphins Twitter is understanding of what's going on.
I would say like 80% of actually no, I would say Dolphins fans are fine. They understand it. But the national media, like the ESPNs, they don't know how to act right now. And then again, there's some fans that we rode that 5-game win streak and we forgot how to act basically altogether. But I think it was just the national media is making kind of fans go crazy right now, or at least me. Like when I see it, I'm like, we're really talking about this. I was like, we're ready to write this guy off in friggin' 2 games. I was like, look what the Falcons did with Favre. They wrote off him. Look at Brett Favre. Look what who else was it? Friggin', I mean, you look at the Chargers did with Breeze. Bang! Look what he does. I mean, so many. You look at what Steve Young got written off by the team, whoever he got drafted by before the Niners.
Eli was ran out of here.
That's what I mean. So it's like if people,
that mainstream media, man.
Oh,
my God!
It's just
those fake news, man.
Sometimes it's just it's too crazy, and you really have to look at like you have to look at what these guys are passionate about. And again, I love watching it, and I always do. And maybe it's hypocritical because we lost, and that's why I don't like to watch it. But sometimes I can't stand it. It's too much to handle.
What's important is, and I think this goes for both of us, because the both of us haven't seen meaningful December football in ever. Like for me, it was, I was the Giants last time the Giants made the playoffs sophomore year of college. So 16. So that's 4 years ago now. I think the Dolphins the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that the Dolphins and Giants played on that same exact Sunday. I remember that for a fact because I did a Monmouth basketball game that day. The Dolphins lost
Steelers.
to the Steelers. I watched that in the press room at halftime. They were getting blown out, and the person I was doing the game with was a huge Dolphins fan. And he was miserable. So we did the whole second half of him just like being miserable. And then the Giants lost to the Packers later that day. So that last Sunday in January of 2017 was the last time we saw any meaningful Dolphins Giants winter football. It's sad. But now we have it. So we should be grateful no matter what, even though, the Giants really don't deserve it. And even though the Dolphins might still be in a quote unquote, rebuild.
Just take it.
We just got to enjoy it because sometimes it takes, with the way we do this with our fan bases, it's once every 5 years, it seems.
Yeah. We enjoy the ride. Just
enjoy the ride. And even if they don't make it, hey, they weren't supposed to make it anyway.
I'm with you.
See, that's why I'm so much more calm with the Giants than I am with like the Yankees, because the Yankees are supposed to win all the time.
100%.
And when they don't, I'm furious and I punch this wall right here.
Yeah, no,
but,
that's a great.
The Giants. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise.
And
I'm gonna enjoy
expectations, and that's perfectly fine.
That's why I have so much more fun watching the Giants than the Yankees. The Yankees I sweat over and I agonize over and I lose sleep over. The Giants are like, oh, they lost. Oh, they were supposed to. They always lose anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
I'm with you there.
Let's briefly talk about the Thanksgiving games. The Ravens Steelers might not even happen, which would be a nightmare for the NFL because that's their primetime game, and that's the only game really worth watching if you're like if not an avid football, a casual fan. Then those are the two better teams. Washington, Dallas. Nobody really cares unless you're an NFC East fan because both those teams are bad. And then what is it? Detroit and Vikings?
No, Detroit and Texans.
And the Texans. And that's not really entertaining.
No.
I always thought there were 4 games on Thanksgiving. Why did I think that?
Just 3. But
always 3?
The funny thing is two of those teams out of the 6 have above 500 records.
They need to do a better job.
Yeah,
here's the problem. Here's the problem with Thanksgiving. Why some traditions are made to be broken. Why does Detroit need a Thanksgiving game every year? When Detroit is consistently good and interesting, then they can have Thanksgiving back.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you, and I think we've seen. Luckily, the Cowboys have been good, but like Detroit has not been good for a while.
You know the old saying when like you get in trouble in school and your teachers would be like, oh, like playing like the board games in class are like a privilege, not a right, or whatever they would say. Yeah. Like Thanksgiving games should be a privilege and not a right. There's no reason why teams like the Chiefs and the Seahawks and the Buccaneers, who are still interesting even though they've been disappointing, and all these upper echelon teams, the Steelers, who are playing on Thanksgiving, but all these great teams are not playing on Thanksgiving, which is the NFL's huge marquee day of the regular season.
Yeah.
And the Lions are. It's ridiculous. The NBA did a smart thing. The Knicks always played at home on opening day. Always. The Knicks suck. And the NBA was finally like, we're not going to show you on Christmas Day anymore. Because that's our like biggest day of the regular season. That's when all the eyeballs are on us. We don't want a shit product out on Christmas Day. I don't know why the NFL doesn't get rid of the Lions.
You have Chiefs Buccaneers as a 4:25 game. Why in God's name?
That should be on Thanksgiving.
That's what I mean. Like it makes even you have a Titans Colts game playing at 1:00. Why the hell are either of those two games not being played on Thanksgiving?
Is there a reason it's the Lions? Like, is that just the way it always has been since the first Thanksgiving ever?
Roger Goodell's got to figure that out. And
did the Lions play when the Pilgrims and Indians, whatever the story is, were they there back all those years ago? I don't get it. I don't understand why the Lions are always there.
No,
it makes no sense. Really, and that is always the worst game out of the 3 every year.
It's just when you think about the MLB, NHL, NBA, and who am I missing? MLB, NHL, NFL, NBA. So NBA does it right, like you said, and tip of the cap to Adam Silver for being the GOAT.
He is the smartest out of all of them.
But just that's what I mean. It's like Christmas Day is their marquee day.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving is football's marquee day. Who the hell in the United States gives a shit about the Texans and Lions?
Yeah. Like
Nobody.
baseball is different because everybody plays on every day anyway.
Yeah.
And then they can just shuffle in who gets the ESPN games. Like Memorial Day, 4th of July,
Yeah.
like you'll get like the Yankees. And I understand the Nationals because of the Washington aspect.
Yeah.
And, the big teams play, the Red Sox and the Dodgers. They always get those national televised games.
Mhm.
But when MLB does something different, the London series,
Yeah.
Yankees, Red Sox, and then this past year was supposed to be Cubs, Cardinals before the pandemic. And then now they're doing the Field of Dreams game, Yankees, White Sox because the White Sox are in the movie.
Yeah.
When Major League Baseball puts on like an event, they do it right. The Little League game, it's always interesting teams.
Yeah.
They do it right. The NBA does it right on Christmas Day. They always have the best games possible. They kill it every single year. The NHL does a great job with their Winter Classic.
Agreed.
It's never teams you don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
It's mostly because only the big markets can fill huge outdoor stadiums.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
And also you can't play outdoor hockey in Tampa with the Lightning. That's just not the way it works.
Very true as well.
And like the Dallas Stars aren't going to fill up whatever. But like you get the cold weather Canadian Northeast teams.
Mhm.
They know what teams are going to be a big draw for that event.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, football is just committed to the Lions and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys haven't been good either. So the Cowboys aren't off the hook here either. They shouldn't have Thanksgiving either.
Even if, say, the Cowboys, even if Dak was still there and they were kind of running away with the division, who gives a shit about a Cowboys-Washington game? Nobody.
No.
So why not? Again, I don't know.
I hate the adage that the America's team thing. Like that was cool, like in the '90s when they won. They haven't won since the year we were born was the last time they won.
Let's stop that. Like exactly. How in God's name? And they better figure this out next year. How are the Chiefs not the new America's team?
Even the London games suck.
Yeah, no. Oh my God, I hate like the London. They have like the games in Mexico. London games are at like 9:00 in the morning. Who the hell is waiting?
And I'm in California. It's at 6 in the morning.
That's what I mean. It's stupid. Like I don't get it. That's why the NFL needs to figure it out because like Thanksgiving, friggin' turkey, mashed potatoes, and friggin' football.
Yeah, turkey, mashed potatoes, Brady, Mahomes. There's no reason why this is not happening.
Yeah, I don't want to watch 4 teams who are under 500. It's ridiculous. And also, I have to wait now until 8:20 when I'm probably in a food coma to watch the best game in the week.
That's another thing. The Sunday night and Monday night games, they can't be at 8:30.
Oh,
they just can't.
It's a sin. It's an absolute sin.
I'm tired. It's Monday.
It's absolutely just way too long.
Kids have school in the morning. Like it's stupid.
Yeah, it's just like I guess the things that you have to wait for friggin' people to get out of work on the West Coast, but tough shit. I don't know.
That's their problem.
That's what I mean. You figure it out. It's like if you have 2 East Coast teams, why the hell are you playing at 8:00? It makes no sense. The game should not be ending at friggin' 1:00, 2:00 in the morning. It's absolutely ridiculous.
It drives me
that baseball
nuts.
does do well because they usually have 7:00 games.
Yeah, they moved ESPN from 8 to 7. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God.
Because even if the Yankees were playing on Sunday Night Baseball, like waiting until 8 for a Yankee Red Sox game in May is just torture. Like I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's a mess. But that's my whole rant about the Thanksgiving games. And it could be such a great event that they can do.
Yeah.
Because everybody's home, right? Most people don't have work the next day, right? And they can have this marquee game. Like the thing is with football, they're going to get ratings anyway, so they don't care. They don't care.
That's the issue, I guess.
But they should reward their fan base, who they claim to care about so deeply, to give them the games that they want.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It was a good point we got into right there.
Yeah, I'm glad I got that off my chest because it's been bothering me all week. Because I was like, oh, Thanksgiving, who's playing? And then I saw the schedule. It's like, I don't give a shit about any of this.
2 shit games.
What are you gonna do? But even though they're bad games, we're still gonna talk about it next week.
That's true.
That's just the way. That's just the way it works in this podcast. But what are you gonna do? That will, just about do it for this episode of Ice the Kicker. We hope you all enjoy those very entertaining Thanksgiving games, and then the rest of the games on Sunday. So, God bless with that. So, for Matt Farrar, my name's Glen and Matt for Ice the Kicker. We will see you next week.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.